Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the premiere episode of Siblings in Design. My name is Paul Rose. I'm going to be your moderator this evening. I am ably joined by our two experts in design and architecture, Ucheju, and he insists I call him Junior Iziogu, our resident architect. They're here to answer all your questions with regard to design, architecture, whatever it may be. And tonight, as has been promised to many of you, what we're looking at doing is debunking myths. There are certain myths, certain old wives' tales, if you like, things we've always been told about design. But the question is, where did these things come from? And more importantly, are they actually accurate? Because, of course, cultural bias would mean that something that worked for Asian design or African design might not work for European design, and vice versa. So we're going to be taking a look at some of those myths. What are your favorite design myths? What are things that you've always been told are the way things are meant to be done, and you thought to yourself, well, why is that? We'd love to hear from you. Put your details in the comments and we will read as many questions out over the course of the next hour, answer as many questions as we can. Now, one little tip for you, if you are new to using StreamYard, as indeed Uche was until about 12 hours ago, it might very well be that your name doesn't come up. You'll come up in our comments as Facebook user. Now, if that happens, what you need to do is you need to give Facebook permission to use StreamYard, or the other way around. There's a button at the top. It'll tell you how to do it. It's really, really, really simple. But that way, we'll be able to actually call you by your name and not Facebook user. So make sure you give that permission. That's the important thing. So first of all, let me welcome our experts. Uche, a very good evening to you. Who's already on mute. It's gone so well. There we are.
Good evening.
You'd think after the best part of 2 years, not being on mute by accident might be the first order of the day, but no.
I tell you, we still bungle that up from time to time. It's impossible. We keep our hands around the mute hovering just in case. You don't want the wrong thing to go out there. So.
Yeah. And then there was wonderful moments where you're desperately clicking on the unmute button, but your computer just doesn't want to know.
And it's not coming up.
Is it? All manner of fun, but no, we've got the technology working. It's crisp this evening. We're very, very happy. Well, for those people who don't know you, the TWC, that stands for the Wellbeing Cognoscente. I love the name of your company. I've told you that before. Why don't you tell our lovely viewers a little bit about yourself?
So, where do I even start talking about myself? But we'll just keep it very simple. I am a free spirit holistic space manager, and this means that I focus on what the person or the people who live in a space need. At every point in time, it's not about my ideas. I believe that design is personal. And so I work with the principles of design to provide holistic solutions for every person in a home, ensuring that they find their anchor, whether it's a mixed personality home where you have some introverts and some extroverts, etc. We find that's what we use. I use the principles of design to, let's say, give each person's creativity a voice, and then translate that into pieces, into structure, etc., for their home, making them comfortable, making the house serve them, and not the other way around.
Wonderful stuff. Something that you and I have actually spoken about a lot, the value of design. And it's so important, isn't it, that people these days, we find ourselves in a real DIY environment where we just think, well, when it comes to design, well, let's just look at a bunch of pictures on the internet, see what everyone else is doing, and think, well, I like that bit, and that bit, and just throw it all together. And of course, it's fine to give you a place to live, but it's not your home, is it? It's not you. It's not your personality. And you're all about helping people connect with their home. And looking at your earliest influences, I know that your earliest influences in terms of space was the Asian influences of space and spatial flow. But when it came to decoration and color, that was more of a Middle Eastern influence for you. Yeah. But now you've moved much more towards the European, I suppose, more minimalist way of doing things. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So this whole transition, how do I put this? I mean, that's why it's called siblings in design. This is something that we've lived through, and my brother is an architect. His wife, she is, I think, we're like two peas in a pod because we rub off each other in that instance. But the whole thing has moved into becoming what it is today, in the sense that you've tried and tested different areas of design, different concepts, different, techniques. The Feng Shui being one of the very first um, areas that I probably became more engrossed in, strictly because of the holistic approach and the fact that it delves into the spiritual aspects of a human being within a space, and how the energy, how the air, how even wind and sun, how it's applied within the home. That those are the little things um, that gave me the desire to study and to delve into it a bit more. But coming to the European influences of minimalism or maximalism, there are really no hard and fast rules, which is why our topic today, or what we're talking about today, is debunking, because there's so much that has been put out there that has caused people to think that it's got to be like this, or it's not right,
Mhm.
or these are the colors that are trending, etc. But holistic views allows you to focus on what that person is about and what you as a person are about. In my own personal experience, I
Mhm.
find that what they call maximalist is not necessarily a bad thing, where there is no clutter, but you might find a lot of colors. And so I've
Yeah,
got all of those within me somewhere, and we've got to figure out the best way to put it out and make your home still serve you but look beautiful at the same time.
I'm very interested in learning more a little about the concept of I've heard of minimalism, maximalism, which in my mind just means a mess. It's interesting to know that it's not that. So I definitely want to talk about that. But I feel like we're leaving Akachuka out of the conversation here. So I want to bring you in at this point to talk a little bit about your influences, and one phrase that you've coined in the bits and pieces you sent me about yourself is form follows function. Clearly, that's a philosophy you live by there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
All right. Hello, everybody. Um, well, I don't feel left out at all. Um, I spend more of my time as an architectural designer consultant, listening and taking down notes, because that's what helps me provide or prefer design solutions. So I guess when I start speaking, then everybody else just starts listening. So I'd rather hear everybody out first, and then I can make my own contributions and debunk some myths, just like we hope to do. First off, I believe when you say for everyone who's been who's ever been in an architectural class or an architecture class or gone to architecture
Right.
school, design school for any reason, you'd that phrase basically pops up at you every time. Every good lecturer would state that your form should follow function. However, it's it can be further explained and given a bit more flesh. When you say form follows function, the question is, what do we want to do? What do we need to do? So we want to go from point A to point B, and let's say point A is point zero, and point B is 10 kilometers away, which is I don't know how far it is from where you are to the next city, but we're going from point A to point B, which we require to probably drive. And if you go back in history, moving people, quicker from one point to the other, people had to develop the wheel. The wheel attached to a cart, attached to a horse, and then you drag yourself through. And they were quicker with the cart than they were on foot. So the question was, how do we get from point A to point B quicker? We need to move quicker by rolling something, by moving in a direction. So that rolling movement has to be secular. And for it to be secular, it has to be a wheel. It has to be attached to something. Now, if two people came up with an idea where one came up with a wheel, a secular wheel, and somebody else came up with a square wheel just because the square looks nicer, well, guess who will get there first? The guy with the circular wheel certainly will get there without any hassles and without having to go to the hospital for neck and body pains, as opposed to the guy with the square wheel who will just keep jumping all the way through. So the form has to come before the function. So you need to ask yourself what you want to do first, and then you get the form to do that. So we want to move, we want to roll, we get a secular object. If we want to stay flat and robust and steady, then we get a flat object. Okay. So basically, it's the philosophy that should guide your design thought process. A lot of people go for the embellishment first before they think about the reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm driving past the beautiful street. I want to buy a house and I see a building. Yes. And the first thing I say to you is, I want that building. Now, you don't know if the owner of that building has married 3 wives and is going to add a fourth. So he's built it that way because of his own constraints or his own preferences. So my job would be to tell you, okay, do you want something that works for you that looks like that? As opposed to, I want that. So these are there are loads of questions that come with that, and at the background of all of these, our form must follow our function.
Right.
Now, the function, okay, doesn't always have to be technical. Sometimes the function could be visual. The visual comfort it gives you when you see something beautiful probably helps you think better, makes you happier. So the function is to provide happiness or makes the onlooker, like they say, beauty is in the beholder. For you to see the eye of the beholder, for you to see something you like makes you more comfortable. So if an embellishment makes your life easier, then we're happy to go with that as the function, and then provide the form for that. So as we go on, I believe we're gonna have to apply this particular rule with most conversations we have. Interior spaces, making sure that we always abide by the rules of anthropometrics, which is the study of the human dimension, and ergonomics, which is the study of the space, the spatial dimensions and circulation spaces, furniture sizes, and how the human form fits in those sizes, and how low your chair should be. If you're going to sit in the living room, how high it should be. If you're eating on the dining table, if you're sitting at the bar, how high should your bar stool be? If you're writing on the desk, you don't want to have to slouch over. These are the minor. They may be minor, but they're actually major considerations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic answer. Thanks very much indeed. And if there are only men with just the one wife who would still like a square house, then he's still happy to design that for you. So don't think for a moment he's married to the whole idea. Yeah, I know we talked a lot about circular being better than square, but he was talking about an analogy with wheels, not property. Roundhouses are cool, but wholeheartedly impractical if you want to put something in a corner. Let's say a few hellos that are coming out there. We've heard from Buki Sawyer Iziobu. I'm guessing a relative, or is that a popular name?
That's my better half.
That's your better. Oh, well, very, very nice to see. Well, she sent you 4 hearts. So that's lovely. Uh,
Two for each of us.
it was going to be five, and then you started talking about having three wives, and you just got a little bit put out. So that's fine. And also hello to Caleb. Okay, Ajio Hall. I hope I'm saying these names correctly. You've given us one of those. By the way, folks, emojis are great. Words so much better. So if you do have a particular question or comment that you'd like to share with us, you're joining us on YouTube this evening or Facebook Live, wherever you are, want to hear from you. And of course, if you are joining us on catch up, then of course we can't answer your question live, but we will answer it in next week's show. So please do feel free to post a comment. We will answer your question. Let's debunk some myths. It's what we came to do, and debunk some myths we will. Now, I'm going to come to you first. Now, I just want to point out, by the way, there's we had a conversation about this before we started putting this show together. I think it's really important that you, fellow audience members, know this, that in the world of design and architecture, interior design, all of that, me know nothing. Okay, total novice. Okay, I have not. This is not one of these three experts sitting around a coffee table making you feel slightly insecure about your lack of knowledge. I share your lack of knowledge, folks. Okay, I don't know about any of this stuff. So I'm finding this just as fascinating as you. So I want to hear some myths debunked. But Caleb has said, Lewis Sullivan's form follows function really needs a redress. That's, I think, Junior, I think you've got some stuff to say about that. I was interested to hear that this is something that all architects learn, but maybe you're thinking, look, you know what? It's been around for a really long time. Maybe it does need some looking at. I think you were certainly alluding toward that. Caleb obviously agrees. Thanks for that, Caleb. If you've got a question for us, throw it in. Ucheju, let's start with your first myth. What's it about? Where does it come from? And can you please debunk it in 5,000 words or less?
5,000.
Now you're going to know. We've got 45 minutes left. Go crazy. But just remember, your brother might like to have a go. I love the fact you said, "Oh, we're called siblings in design because of," and you gave loads of reasons. Not the fact you actually are siblings, which would be, a major component, I would think, in naming an organisation when you actually are siblings. But okay. Oh, we've got another one. Aloma Harrington. All hail the designers. She likes you. That's a nice one. I like that one. So anyway, enough of this nonsense. Debunk a myth for me, Ucheju. Come on. What you got?
I'll do you one better, Paul. You know what I'll do? I'll leave it dangling so people have something to think about. But I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about today is
I don't want cliffhangers on episode 1.
I am going to who says? You see, this is exactly why we're debunking. This is exactly why we're debunking, because we have people come up and tell us that, because it worked for them, it becomes a rule of law, and people generally gravitate towards that. And we're here to ask those questions. Why? Right. Who says? According to whom? Why should I not? Why can't I? So, I mean, if you present a superior argument to a design concept that I have, then it's up. I need to take that on board and test it out first, because sugar might be good for one person and very bad for the next. Mm-hmm. Same way, the man who wants to build his house and put a 5-foot door, maybe everybody in his family is below 5 feet, and then the visitor who is 6 feet plus now insists, no, your doors must be 6 feet and above. Why? Says who? Bottom line is, with holistic design, what I've come to understand is every single person is different, and what works for me may not work for you, but I could suggest the principles of design to guide your choice. Mm-hmm. So you're not mismatching things and causing yourself harm because you're trying to, say, I want it my way. So with the myth of putting your headboard against a window, this is actually a Feng Shui concept, where it's said, in the study of Feng Shui, it's said that the headboard against the window would let too much energy flow out of the house, out of the person, and it will cause you to have restless sleep. Now, that tried and tested. It's not a myth
Mm.
where you have a bed that the headboard doesn't go above the window. So there is no bridge, there's nothing blocking your head from direct contact. But the one thing I'll tell you is if your house is on a street and it's a busy street and you put your headboard, a short headboard, against a window that's kind of low and you have like you can see the ledge, for instance, all the sound and indeed all the heat from the house. That's how that's the angle where they leave and come in. So you're not going to have a good night's sleep if you are on a busy street anyway. If your your headboard is against the window, whether you've got a high headboard or a short one. But then again, when you set your headboard against a solid wall, which is where design, according to the design experts, say it should be, it just gives you that added support. It means that you are being supported by something that's solid. Same with your chair facing, not backing the door when you come in, but the one for the bedroom, because that's where you're supposed to have the most rest. That's where you're supposed to be able to um what's the word, distress. You should actually make it such that it serves you as a person. There's no single person whose bed would stay in the middle of a room that would not feel like they're floating. Although I've tried that just to prove that they're right. And it does feel very weird when you wake up in the middle of the night to go for a bathroom break and you're not sure which direction you're supposed to be facing because you're right there in the middle of the room with nothing to give you some kind of direction as to where you're going. So that uh, is not a myth, but it's been debunked that you cannot have it
I would
by the
like
window.
to, I'd like to, I'd like to comment on that, Uch.
Mhm.
I call Uche Uch. Um, yes, so I
Should I
believe,
do that?
yes, please.
Okay, I
So
will.
we're quite a number of us. Yeah, so the thing is, the bed against a wall with a window, or underneath a window, or obstructing a window, or beside a window, or whichever. Um, Feng Shui, I'd like to sit with the person who came up with all of those laws and ask some questions, but I don't think that person exists anymore. Or maybe there's some kind of generational um, responsibility passed down. We'd like to find out who this person is.
Hmm.
But I mean, there are some truths that can be found both ways from Feng Shui laws and the laws of design, in architecture. For instance, um, the average bedroom growing up as a kid, in Nigeria, in Port Harcourt, everywhere else I lived, you walk into a bedroom and the first thing you see is the bed has been placed right next to a window, either underneath the window, the headboard underneath the window, or the side of the bed, by the window. And when you ask, the first reason you would get is we want fresh air,
Or
because
like,
or light, mostly fresh air at night, because most people are asleep. Most people didn't have air conditioning at the time, but they had the odd fan, or the ceiling fan, or a standing fan, installed in the bedroom. But there was this thing that the natural air is better, so you want to keep your bed as close to the window as possible. But then comes the other thing, um, for security reasons. People don't want to be too close to the window because the odd pilfering person passes by your window, tries to get access, and he's probably plucked off your headset, or your wristwatch, or your laptop, or from something that's close to the bed, or something on the bed. So there's this thing as well. So a lot of people would rather move their beds away from that. So let's talk about ventilation. If you want to, if you're one of those who would rather have, your bed in a position where you have full access, from the window, air transfer and all of that while you're asleep. So the question is, how how properly ventilated is your bedroom? Because if your bedroom doesn't have or hasn't obeyed the laws of proper ventilation, then chances are, even if you stick your bed underneath the window, you won't even get any air in the first place. So um, let's stick with design first of all. As much as possible for your bedroom to look nice, you want that headboard against a wall that can be used with a painting, some kind of artwork, a picture. Also provides, a solid backdrop for your bed head, some kind of anchor,
Yeah.
either at the corner of the bed, at the corner of the room, or right smack against the wall. Now, so what I do with most of my designs nowadays is, since I know that people like to see windows, or people like to have their windows against the bed head, I try to provide flanking windows, narrower windows, probably in metric terms, nothing more than, say, 450 millimeters wide, which comes to about a foot and a half or something like that, or, you know, uh, on both sides of the bed. So it creates some sort of balance.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the bed, you have two windows behind you or beside you, right after your bedside chests, for instance, if you must have a window there. Otherwise, I would rather have windows placed on two sides. Hopefully, if you can get a windward side on the leeward side, then you're good. Air comes in one side and goes out the other side, and you leave your bed head wall as blank as possible. It makes the room look better, makes it look nicer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the constraints where you must have a window above your bed, then I've done that before, and I always suggest high level windows, such that you can't see out of it. So it basically functions how it should, which is get air out or get air in.
Mm-hmm.
And since hot air rises, it's easier to get air out of a high level window than it
That
is
makes
from a
sense.
deep line window. So the myth then would be, the bed head shouldn't be under a window. Um, I don't know. I'm sure some of our viewers
Audience.
or
Yes.
audience would tell us if they strongly believe that or not. I believe that you shouldn't have your bed head underneath a window. You could have it beside the window, but certainly not underneath the window, and at least away from the window as possible.
So what about and this is actually very interesting for me on a personal level, thinking about my children's bedrooms. They're single rooms, and their
Mm-hmm.
bed is the window is at the front of the house, and the layout of the room is such that the bed is their bed head is underneath it, not directly under, because that would put the bed in the center of the room, and that's impractical. But it's
Yeah.
off the side against a wall, but the bed head is under the window. Um,
So,
they sleep fine. So I'm just wondering, what would you, because okay, you talked about constraint there, that sometimes there's nothing you can do. The layout is such that
Exactly.
there's
Yes.
nothing you can do about
I
that.
was I was actually just going to,
Tricky.
yeah, I was going to address that because he's talking from the point of view of building,
Yeah,
where you've got this house, it's probably you're renting, and we also have to consider cultures here. We're not talking about just, you know, people who are resident in Nigeria, where you can do a bit more with in terms of structural restruct, here in Europe or in the UK especially, it's a lot more difficult to just take out a window. You've got to go through all sorts levels of permits, etc., to
yeah.
to even sometimes increase the number of lighting that you have in a house.
Mm,
There's a bit more that goes into it. So where you've come to a place where you have those constraints, and which is why it's a myth that I like to debunk, is that if you've got a square room or a room that is slightly triangular, just for lack of a better way to describe it, where you've got a window that's facing the road, you've got wardrobes to your left, you've got only one existing wall and it's too small for your headboard, but the wall that has the space that's going to take your headboard is where you've got the window.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
if you place it where the window is, then you don't have enough space on one side or you can't get to your wardrobe. So because we deal with difficult spaces, I've been in my experience decorating for people with those kind of issues. I've come to a place where I find that using a higher headboard that goes above the level of the window protects the person and provides that illusion of a solid something solid behind the person's head,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
then you position it in such a way that you still have a bit of the window sticking out on one side, and then giving the person enough room to put like a bedside drawer with a lamp so that both will provide light,
Mm.
natural light
Exactly what we've done.
or artificial light
Yeah.
when
The
it
layout
is
works very
needed.
well there.
Yeah, and it still gives you that anchor that you want. So
And that's a feng shui issue, isn't it? The fact that you should sleep with some security behind you. Because what's
yeah.
Yes.
interesting is, of course, from the bedroom layout, the door to the bedroom is at the other end. So,
Yeah.
so you can see the door. And I've always
Mhm.
understood the feng shui is you want to be able to see the door. So
Exactly.
two myths therefore are going against each other because sometimes the door is opposite the window. So
Exactly.
what are you meant to do? I've got some wonderful comments coming in here. Caleb, who clearly likes a fight. With you, Julia. I think you and him need to sit down and have a drink. Bed headboards and windows. Form follows function? Question mark. I don't know what you're getting at, Caleb. You just seem very angry. For a Sunday
No,
night,
no.
too angry. Let's just
No, no, he's not. He's not angry. He's just asking. See, the thing with so Caleb is also an architect. Caleb is my friend.
right.
Um,
No, yeah, I figured as
so
much. It
yeah,
speaks
so
like
we spend we spend all our time, every single minute, talking about um, design and the problems of design construction.
Mm,
So the beauty about design is like Uche said at the beginning. What is design? Design is whatever you want to make of it. As
yeah.
long as you don't knock your small toe while you're walking around,
Mm,
it works. So just like people make statements that seem categorical because of the way they put it.
mm,
Some things are written in books. People have said some things, and people just run with it. Other people run with it,
Yeah.
and not necessarily. So, which is why I believe, and which is why I said that we might have to. Um, when you say form follows function, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
mm,
Sometimes you may end up tweaking things here and there, to create some kind of balance
yeah.
with everything else in the room. I mean, if like we said about the bed head, if you have no other option, what
Exactly.
what do you do? Now that brings me back to my other point. A lot of us live in houses already that we have no options, but a lot of us would still develop buildings or end up having to do new buildings or fresh designs. It's best that from the design stage, it's best that you do a furniture layout for every space so that you can simulate your furniture positions, simulate your bed positions. If my bed is here, then I don't want a window anywhere near that.
Mm,
If my bed is here, my door has to be here. You know, this is when you have a blank sheet of paper to work.
mm,
Mhm.
But when you're faced with the option, or you're faced without an option, where you just have to chuck your bed in somewhere, then I guess there are other ways to go about it. But if the constraint is so much that your bed head has to truncate the window, when I say truncate, I don't mean go through, but like prevent prevent or block out a part of the window where you have your blind tucked away behind your bed head, and it just looks awkward. well, I'm sorry. You might have to live with that, But as much as possible, the question is it the myth would be, is it uh, is it tragic? Is it a no-no? Is it something that must never be done? Is it criminal to have your bed or behind your window or in front of the window? I don't think so. If we had a choice, we wouldn't have it there.
Anyway, I don't think the police are going to knock on the door saying we've had
No,
reports of the bed being under a
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
going away. Fine.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually bring up a couple of points here. First of all, to address something that Aloma Harrington has written in. No beds under the windows, please. Too many scary things running through my mind. Again, Aloma, grab a drink. We're all friends here. Tell us more. I want to know. In fact, it was said, Aloma, please share. She said, obviously, I'm not a space manager or architect. I don't think that would necessarily exclude you from having scary thoughts. But I want to touch on something that you mentioned, Junior, and that's about the whole issue of security when it comes to people going past the window and thieves and things like that. Now, obviously, I'm in England, and the bedrooms in my house are on the first, second floor. Now, obviously, I don't know too much about Nigerian architecture, but is a majority of things are they pretty much bungalows there? Is that the norm for everything to be on the one floor?
Well, we started out with mostly bungalows, but as time went on, land became more difficult to come by, became more expensive, became scarce. People started having to get smaller plots, and when your plots get smaller, your buildings start going higher.
Yep.
So, back in the day, yes, most buildings would be bungalows with courtyards and all of that. So there was access around the building, but in recent time, there was a time when plots used to be minimum 900 square meters, and then it went down to 600 square meters. In fact, nowadays we have some 300 square meter plots. And if your plot is 300 square meters, certainly you're going up 2 floors. So your bedrooms would certainly be on the first and second floor, or the third floor even. So if your bedrooms are on that level, then you certainly don't have the issues with people walking behind and trying to poke anything through. Now at that level or at those levels, your concern will be more about the design, the look and feel of the bedroom, as opposed to a peeking or a peeping Tom,
Right.
trying to pilfer.
Yeah.
So those are the things. It's not just about physical intrusion. It's more like the look and feel of the room. You don't want to have your blinds tucked away behind your bed.
Right. Okay. Well, I think you've debunked a myth there. I have to be honest with you, given that for the last 13 years we've had 2 beds under the window and slept perfectly soundly. I guess it really wasn't an issue from that perspective, but it's good to know that that myth is out there. Although, yeah, it does look a little awkward. The bed head does obscure a little bit of the window.
Yeah,
but I think that sometimes, if you're moving into a house and you think, well, I'm not about to go and get all the windows relaid and everything like that, just think, you know what? It works. It's fine. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is to just, yeah, sure, there might be the rules that exist, but as you said at the beginning, says who? At the end of the day, do I either put my bed against the window, sleep perfectly soundly, have the light working very, very well for me and everything's great, or do I pay some builder several £1,000s to rip out a wall so I can obey some law which isn't even a law anyway? It's an opinion. It's an opinion that's not even shared anymore. And I mean, the great thing what I've always loved about Feng Shui, and I'm sure Uchi would agree with me here, is that there's a lot of practicality to it. It all makes sense. There's not this sort of, when people talk about mythical energy flows and things like that, sure, yes, there is that element. But if you read about Feng Shui, and indeed I have, and I know you have it extensively, it actually makes sense regardless of culture. It makes sense to actually have your in your office, don't have your back away from the door, because you can't. If someone's going to come in, you've got to look like that. It's bad for your neck. It's as simple. It's just, what are we doing that? Doing that just then I heard a clicking sound. I'm getting on, but that's fair. I want to actually look at a couple of more comments that are actually coming in before we let Junior debunk his own favourite myth. Josephine, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that surname. Alegwekwe, is that right?
And you did good.
Thank you. My surname's Rose. Good evening, everyone. So why don't builders take this in mind when designing and building? Well, that's actually, you know what? Let's stop right there and address that, Junior.
Yes.
Do they actually take this into account?
Okay, so like you have good drivers, you have some bad drivers. Like you have good teachers, you have some bad teachers. I mean, dare I state, you have good architects and you have bad architects. I won't even mince my words because I've seen some architectural designs that I've been too ashamed of to even make a comment. So the thing is, the devil's in the detail. The amount of time spent on actual spatial design, space by space. A lot of designers allow spaces happen upon the design, where all of a sudden there's a store that was never planned for, and that's because two spaces didn't just work. So we chuck a wall in there, put a door, and label it the store. You know, and then so because that's not done, conscientiously, meticulously from the start, with the circulation diagrams, with the we call it bubble diagrams in school. I don't know if we still do that, but I still do it. Bubbles that show you special relationships and how spaces should interact with each other, moving from one place to the other. Now, by the time you have that working perfectly and you start isolating those spaces one by one and asking yourself the questions, basically living inside your design even before it becomes,
On paper.
before it gets on paper to be approved by the client, you would have answered millions of questions with every line that you've drawn. So if you've done that, chances are you wouldn't have the scenario where, for instance, you open your toilet door and it knocks right on the WC. Your toilet door can't open fully because your WC is right next to it. Somebody hasn't done somebody hasn't done his work, properly, measurements and thinking it through and all of that. Now, the other thing is, considering design, everybody is a designer, but some people went to school. Some people have an education, in design. I remember, I think my granddad probably drew his house on the floor with a stick. I want my bedroom here. I want my living room there. And growing up, it worked. But as we got older, we saw that there was quite a bit of some things didn't quite work. This could have been done this way or that way. But maybe he lived there and he was fine. He didn't suffer any stroke because of that. But at the end of the day, it didn't work the way it should have worked. Now, do people think about these things while doing their designs? Maybe not very much. And I always advise would-be clients or whenever I have conversations with people about design, don't be lazy about it. Ask all the questions. No question is stupid. Every question is important. Because as architects, we don't think about every single detail. There's some details that we don't think about. And that's because we just expect it to happen, But somebody might just ask you, why is the front door opening in and not out? I'm sure Caleb would like to. We can argue this from now till tomorrow. Okay, but I want my front door to open in because when you get to the door from the outside, I want to open it in because it means that the person on the inside is welcoming you. But I can say I want my door to open out because I don't want anybody to be able to break into the house. It's more difficult to break the door when it's opening towards you than when you can push it in. So
I thought about that.
Exactly.
I always notice, so in the UK,
Yes.
doors open in. They all open in.
Hence,
But
it's
Well,
easy for them, the jam lock, to just go bong and it takes out the whole frame with it.
whenever I travel to go to countries, you notice that in some countries they all open out. It almost seems like a cultural thing.
yes.
Is,
So,
is that true, or is it just a personal?
nowadays, I think the door makers, the door manufacturers, and door designers have realized that people have that preference actually is a 50-50 thing. Some people like their doors to open out and others like to open in. So you have options for every kind of security door
It's
or external
flexible
door.
now.
It's
Mhm.
flexible. You want an in opening door or an out opening door, whichever. So it depends on choice. Now, we're giving two choices here. If the doors are going to be hinged, which would swing in or out, then you need to pick one. If it's a sliding door, which most times is a security door, a glass door or something, then you don't have many choices. Either one leaf, two leaves, three leaves, or four leaves, or basically it will just slide. So again, the designer, who doesn't have to be an architect, just needs to know what he or she wants.
What the
Mm.
You
form
know
is, what the
what they
function
want,
is.
But it
basically.
it
Yeah.
brings up the question there, and Uchechi, I want to put this one to you.
Mm.
But I loved Junior's concept saying everyone's a designer. I think I love that because
Yeah.
we all, and as you say, some of us really should not do it at all. Other people should make a living out of it, and the spectrum exists within it. But
Mhm.
from a professional perspective, and I know your details are scrolling on the bottom there, so thanks for putting those up. From a professional perspective, what do you do if someone comes to you with a design, an idea, and it's sort of going to work? It's not terrible, but you could do it a little bit better.
Mm.
But you also know that saying this to them might bruise their ego. Do you, as a professional, do you take it on the chin and just say, whatever you say, sir? Thank you very much. Or do you say, well, hang on a minute, listen, I need to tell you why this idea is not as good as this idea. What do you, I mean,
So,
I realize designers are all going to have different ones, but this is about you. What's your take on that?
so for me, I would, starting from talking about Nigeria culturally, beginning with bungalows and moving up to um, um, what are they called now? Duplexes and townhouses and the rest
Story
of them.
buildings.
Story.
So historically, you come from your culture usually dictates a bit of what your style is and what other influences that you've allowed would allow those styles to evolve with you. So as a space manager or a space planner, being holistic allows the person to express their design, to express their concept, to express what it is they would desire for their space to do for them. The process is to allow those ideas have a voice through the designs that you're going to propose to them. So if someone comes to me with a design, I'm not going to knock it from the beginning because I'm not the one who's going to sleep in it. Like you said, your kids, the beds are by the window and they sleep well. That's what you think, but have you asked them? Do you know if they, relatively you work with what you have, and
You
then you
have a
choose
choice.
to be okay. you, you choose to be okay with what you have. These are my limitations. This is what there is. So if I was going to help someone who doesn't have a choice but to have their bed against a window, I would help them by investing or getting them to invest in a bed with a high headboard that allows for that safety net, because whether, until you're exposed to something, you really don't know what you feel about that thing until you go there. And once you've been exposed to it, you
Right.
can't be unexposed anymore. So if I have never slept with my head against a solid wall, then I really don't know if I like it that way or not.
Mm,
So I always try and get my clients to try things out. I
right.
try and get them to experience it first, because the whole thing about holistic space management is creating experiences for people within their home. So you're not looking for a holiday to rest. You rest at home and go on holiday to play, as opposed to trying to run away from your life. You know,
I
that's
like
the
that.
whole
Go on
that's the
holidays
whole
and play and rest
idea.
at home. I love
You know,
that. It's
that's the whole
brilliant.
idea and the concept. And this is where we work together as siblings, work very well. And my brother's wife is one of the pseudo designers, because she hasn't taken that on as a job, but it's in
Right.
her blood. So we bump off, we rub off each other. If I was going to think about a way I wanted to, and I'm restless, I always try it out on myself first before I do it to someone else. So I could call her up in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter what I said. Listen, I want to move this, and she would never tell me don't do it. She gives me the fuel if I wanted any,
I'm waiting for her to type, please don't call me in the middle of the
I
night.
will call her.
It's going to come up any second. And she's sitting probably, right, she's probably just out of shot, isn't she, Judy? She's next to you. Like, don't call me at 3 in the morning to talk about design. I want to sleep.
Well, she
I've got
calls
my
me
bed
too.
right.
She
No,
calls
I
me as
can't.
well.
I've caught them in the act many times. So
Aloma Harrington asked an interesting question before, and remember, she's terrified, so God bless her for actually coming on board. How about, I'm joking, Aloma, it's lovely to see you. How about a sofa in front of the window? So we talk about beds. What about sofas? Let's move it into the living room. A sofa in front of the window. Is that fine? Is the
Well,
myth used about beds?
yeah, considering the myth was that it would not, energy would flow out of the room and then you would get a restless sleep. The whole idea was about sleep, because if you're sat in a chair, chances are that's not where you sleep. You're awake, so there's really no harm in your chair being under a window or by a window. You know, so
I think I
if you
think
like your curtains to touch the floor and see them, then that's not where it should
yeah,
be. But
exactly.
even then,
Of course, Aloma, if you are fighting regularly with your husband so that he's sleeping on the sofa, keep that in mind. Yeah, something to take
I
on board.
think yeah, I think
Deep
to,
hell
to
out
answer
of that's myth. Sorry, Gene.
to answer Uloma's question, I think um, a sofa under a window is actually a beautiful thing, especially when you can utilize the ledge, the window ledge,
exactly.
with ornaments, artifacts, books, flower pots, bonsai plants,
And even
you
looking out,
know, and looking out of the window. If you have a nice garden,
yeah,
you can be there forever. So it's not a bad thing. It's actually there are loads and loads of designs that look beautiful with your sofa or your couch right under a window. Now, the window may be deep enough um, to take like an ottoman sized chair, or a chair with the height of an ottoman. So what that means is your view even goes all the way to the floor of of the other side,
yeah,
the parts of the house, to which you're looking out. So at the end of the day, the options, having a couch under the window are actually inexhaustible. You
yeah.
could you could do it could be a corner piece couch. It could be a straight three-seater couch. It could be
It could be
a
occasional chairs.
U-shaped couch. It could be anything at all.
Yeah, occasional
And
chairs.
even breakfast seating, like when you have couches, corner pieces in the foyer or something. You always have a window out there where you have a lamp and you can read your books there, or your novels there. You're looking out of the window, especially if that window is in the corner of the space, the living room or the foyer or your dining room. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Because you're talking about looking out of the window, but I'm just wondering if Aloma means the sofa, like the back of it, is under the window, because you wouldn't be looking out then. It's behind you. So
So the thing is, when you have the back of the sofa, right, you have the window behind you. The fact that, I mean, mentally, unconsciously, the fact that you have the window behind you
You will always
makes you want to look
sideways.
out. You don't
You will
even know
always
when you
sit
sit
sideways.
sideways and look out of the window.
you have to look out.
Except there's something, that's keeping your attention on the other side of the room, where you have the conversation, or you're in the meeting. But even that, at some point, you would sit astride yourself and basically look out of the window. And
Yeah,
especially if you have a ledge with interesting things, on it, you actually want to look out that window,
yeah.
whilst you're sat there. So I think it works.
And of course, the
So
bit that
from a designer's standpoint, we would always gravitate towards creating spaces that have those kind of seating arrangements around the window. And in our own experience in our homes, we hardly close curtains anyway. So
Yeah,
you would
yeah,
still see the ceiling to floor curtains, and then you would find a nice backdrop of books or lamps, or it always gives you that added, you know, creative space, which is the thing about maximalism you were talking about earlier when we started.
yeah.
And it
Hold
it
on,
allows you it
hold on.
allows you who likes a lot of things around you to find places to put them without cluttering your space. So
I tidied up for this. Look, just so minimal. I built a
there's there's
yeah.
almost nothing. If you look behind me, you'll see plants, you'll see pillows, you'd see there's a breakout space to read if I wanted to. So
I always enjoy your backdrops because A, they're real, and B, they absolutely represent your brand. You just think,
yeah,
yep, that's it. Always,
yeah,
always looks good. Appreciate we've only got a few minutes left there now. Was there
yes.
another myth, Junior, that you wanted to debunk real quick, or do you want to carry it over onto next week? Your thoughts?
yeah. Well, I'll just state one. I think one of the common ones. Most people say designers are untidy. I don't think so.
Okay.
Um, or design spaces need to be untidy or disorganized. Um, what may be disorganization to you would be organized chaos to the designer. So if you come look at my desk, for instance, I always have stuff kept. I know exactly how I've kept it. And
Mm,
if you move anyone, then it alters my center. I have to keep it the way it was. It may look askew, but it's actually at the angle that I've kept it there so I can see it as soon as I walk in, or as soon as I want it, or as soon as I want to refer to it.
mm.
So are designers always, or do you have to be untidy or disorganized to be a designer? No, not really. But what is disorganization anyway? I mean, it's whatever
That
you say it is.
that's where we're back to where we started, according to whom.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, listen, I hear that entirely. I'm very much the same. I think my kids are the same anyway. The place looks like a mess, but you say, where's such and such piece of paper? And there you go.
Yeah,
Know
yeah,
exactly
Exactly.
where it is because they have the system.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, look, try and actually, can you imagine an architect was like, we want you to design a building which represents the human mind.
Oh,
How
Whoa,
chaotic would that be? It wouldn't make any
whoa.
sense, and also you couldn't do it because every mind is different. But it's
Yeah,
all over the place,
yeah.
so it kind of makes sense. You think, you know what? It works for me. So as a designer, obviously you're saying, okay, so do you want to have lots of cupboards and drawers and things where everything gets put away, or would you rather have lots of space where your stuff is out and
And
you
you
can
can
see
see
where
them.
everything is? And again, that's a personal thing. Me, I'd love to put stuff away, but as soon as I do that, I never find it again. So that's why my studio is a mess. But
yeah.
just like, and my wife understands. It's like I have a system. It's just I know
Take a
where
deep breath.
my socks are. They're on that piece of floor. Just it's fine. Just leave it. I don't leave my socks on the floor. I'm joking. It's a joke. But you understand, but kids leave their socks on the floor and they know which bit of floor. And it's the
Which
Exactly.
bit of floor it is. So
I won't find them.
we're gonna be looking at decluttering, or rather the relationship between clutter and the mind, and how it
Ooh,
affects your environment in our next
I like
segment.
the sound of
It's
that.
not a myth, but it's we will debunk some myths in that as well. So
Brilliant. Well, you and I have done that a lot. We've spoken a lot about decluttering and the power of decluttering, and
yeah,
more importantly, the value. of
The
decluttering.
value.
Because, and I'm sure that there'll be people that are thinking, well, what do you mean by that? Bottom line, and Uchi's got a wonderful story about this of people that were looking to actually spend money on extending their home. She went in there, tidied it up, and gave them essentially a room's worth of extra space in
Yeah.
the house they already owned. Decluttering is not just good for the mind, it's incredibly good for the wallet. So that's something you want to actually stay tuned to. So I want to thank you guys. It's been an absolutely brilliant first show. I hope you've enjoyed doing it. I certainly enjoyed hosting it for you.
Yes.
So every single one of you that's actually posted a comment, even if it was just an emoji, thanks for that. For Caleb, Junior, go and buy him a drink. He clearly is just, he just wants some love. I think that's what's going on there. To Iloma, sleep well. Don't have nightmares. Jerry Springer's now don't have nightmares. But we've also got Nakema Colum Chinwa. Oh, come on, I hope I got that one right. Just saying, oh, look at my cousins. That's just art. And Bookie, Uchi's going to ring you about 3:30 this morning just to say hi. That's what's going to happen. Just be ready for it. If you are watching this on catch up, and we hope that you are, please do post a comment. Even if you're thinking, oh, well, I don't want to talk about clutter, I want to talk about something else. Doesn't matter. You are people that are going to drive content off this show. These guys are absolute experts. They know their stuff. So put them to the test. If you're thinking about design, you're thinking about building, you're thinking about tidying a room and what to do with the stuff, these are the people to ask. We want the comments. We will dedicate entire shows to answering these questions for you. And as time goes on, we'll certainly be inviting a few of you to actually come and join us as well to ask your questions live. We're going to turn this into a thing. It's going to be, I think we're looking at doing it once a month, aren't we? I think that's the
once a month for now. Yes.
That's
the plan. I don't know what the schedule is going to be in December. There's a certain public holidays that tend to creep up around about this time. You might be familiar with them, but we'll make something happen. But on behalf of myself, Paul Rose, Ucheju, and Ogchuku, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.